This podcast may contain certain forward-looking statements concerning Tri-State's plans, performance, and strategies. Actual results may differ materially because of numerous factors, and Tri-State undertakes no obligation to update these forward-looking statements. We urge you to review Tri-State's filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission for a discussion of these factors.
It's all about calculated risk. No storm is ever the same. No heat wave is ever the same. You have to look at, is it localized or is it in a broader region? Communication is the key. Everyone has specialties and knows how to move power about the system.
Thank you for joining us for Western Watts. I'm Elizabeth Shilling.
I'm Julia Perry.
And we are here today talking with Tim Cusick. Tim, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks everyone for having me. I really appreciate it.
Tell us what your title is here at Tri-State.
I am the Power and Gas Marketing Supervisor. In the industry, it's known as the day-ahead team. Essentially, I oversee all operations from a day-ahead perspective. So next day to a couple days out, and then we have a term basis all the way out to a year.
So how long have you been with Tri-State?
So I've been at Tri-State for 5.5 years now.
Always in this role, or has it evolved while you've been here?
So I started as a trainee in the energy markets team. I was an energy portfolio trainee and then worked my way up to supervisor from there.
Awesome.
You mentioned it before, but compared to other G&Ts, is Tri-State a more complicated system or a middle-of-the-road kind of system, just with as much transmission and resources and geography that you're working with?
I'll say Tri-State is probably the most unique system and complex system in the area that I know of. We have wire we always say from Canada to Mexico, pretty much. We have generators all over our footprint. We have tons of transmission reservations. It's so unique, and there's so many ways that you can balance and maximize using our transmission reservations. It's super complex, and once you understand it and figure out how it all works together, it makes a lot of sense, but it can be confusing, definitely.
Is this something you brought from work into your real life? Or are you also like an extreme couponer, like this plus this plus this gets us the best deal?
I try to just stay relaxed and laid back. You have to just be adaptable. It's always going to change. You'll plan your entire day, and you'll finish up your day ahead plan, and power plant trips offline. So you have 30 minutes to redo the entire system and recall all of your tags and buy new transmission, see if anyone can sell you power. And so it doesn't happen. You got to just roll with it, stay relaxed. And that's why having the team that we have is awesome. They're very dynamic. Everyone is super adaptable and just friendly and reliable. That's the key.
This work might be intimidating to some, but what was it about this type of work that drew you in particular?
I was just interested. People always talk about the energy industry, and you don't really know what it entails. After being in it now, that's what kind of drove me to it, is I don't really know anything about it. You turn on the light switch and you have power. And being in it now, I see there's all these behind the scenes aspects that are going on. And just to turn that light on, that's already been planned based on what my team has done.
You got that look behind the curtain. You get to see how the magic actually happens. I like that.
How do you even get into a role in energy markets? What degree even translates to that?
I studied supply chain management. You get a lot of people that have studied engineering. We have people that were accountants. We have just business, economics, engineers, a wide variety of people. It's just sticking your head into it and figuring out what it's going to all be about.
So you're solving for that problem every day. Tell me how that ties back to Tri-State's mission and how you're looking for the best solution.
We're very lucky in our group that we get to live the mission every single day. We come in the morning and you run your software and you say, all right, can I reliably serve my demand? Can I affordably serve it? And can I responsibly serve it? And once you've met all those requirements, then you can look at it and say, ooh, now I'm going to go out and I can sell some in the market. I can buy some. I can raise my generation in this market and lower it in this market so that I can gain more margin. And it's figuring out how it all fits together, ultimately just to make our members' rates lower and really serve the bottom line and try to make the membership happy.
What are you guys looking at for that time ahead that you're planning for? What are you making sure happens for this organization?
Our department really follows the core principle of the company, which is we want to reliably, affordably, and responsibly serve our member load. In order to do that, we take generation forecasts, demand forecasts, and we run it through an optimization system. After that, we get a result, and then we decide if we have any excess power to sell or if we need to buy power to serve our demand. How can we optimize our market position while participating in the different markets that we participate in?
What are energy markets?
Energy markets consist of the day-ahead team, the real-time team, and our market analytics team. The real-time team focuses on hour by hour, minute by minute, how are we matching our supply and demand, and how can we effectively maximize our market position. As I was stating, day ahead, we focus on forecasts and we plan. We're pre-active, where real-time tends to be more reactive when it comes to dealing with situations. And then the market analytics team takes all the results and looks at the broader trends of what's going on, and they see how we can do better or where are areas that we are excelling. We take all three of those and they're all tied together to just drive our core mission and make sure that we're accomplishing our goals.
When you say matching supply and demand, you're talking about which tri-state resources are currently being used and then buying and selling on the market. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
We look at our market mix. We have a very diverse set of generators at Tri-State. We have coal generation, wind generation, solar, hydro. We're making advances and moving towards battery. And then we also look at the market, and there's a market for power, just like there's a market for pretty much any commodity. There's prices that are driven, and we look at that each day and we see, okay, once we've run our solution, what resources have been dispatched? Do we have any excess that we can look to sell? What is, if we are to sell, what is the market cost for that? We're talking to counterparties back and forth. We're really just trying to see how can we lower member rates by doing what we're doing.
You're right. Everyone has an electric bill. We all know about oil and gas prices. How come I really haven't heard of energy markets in terms of solar and coal and that kind of thing?
I think energy markets is one of those extreme behind the scene things that people don't really think of. People turn on a light switch and you have power, but it really comes down to, I like to put it as, what we do is supply chain. How is the power generated? How is it going to get from point A to B? And where is it delivered? There's so many different aspects that go into each one of those. And it's just constantly analyzing trends and figuring out what is going to be the most effective way while navigating the diverse system that we operate in.
So you're looking at everything from weather, time of day, and what resources are available at different times of day. What different factors go into what you're going to be dispatching at any given point?
It all comes down to forecasts. We rely super heavily on forecasts, and that's why, lucky for us, we have a real-time team that is able to correct anything that doesn't come in according to plan. You have to look at trends and weather trends, and a lot of it comes down to being a best guess. You use the best information, the best forecasting that we have, and we make our decisions based on that. We know that at nighttime, solar is going to be ramping off. We know that when it's super hot, the wind doesn't blow. We plan our units accordingly based on just knowledge that we've gained and seeing overall trends in the market. That's something that you have to consider on a daily. It's very fluid, very dynamic, and we just have to figure out how we can maximize what we can.
When they say there's a 70% chance of rain in the area, you actually know what that means.
Hopefully. The biggest thing is we see our biggest changes in forecasts mainly from our renewables, in particular wind. If you find someone that can predict when the wind blows, please point them my direction, because that's mainly what everyone's always looking for. There's no right recipe. It's all about what are you comfortable leveraging in the market and realizing if this doesn't come in, I have this unit in my back pocket that we're going to dispatch to help replace all that power.
I don't know if you've heard of this little trick. You actually lick your finger and then you stick it in the air and then that'll tell you where the wind's coming from. Maybe you guys should try that.
Yep. Sometimes it feels like that's what we're doing, but just work through it.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm on it.
I was thinking of the predictions that your team is doing and then what the real-time team is doing in real time. And I keep picturing going to a buffet and making a plate for somebody else. You don't know how hungry they are, or maybe they're not that hungry at all. You're putting on the plate what you predict they're going to want, and then you serve it to them, and they're like, actually, I was a little more hungry than that, and they got to figure something out or go to the vending machine and grab a snack. I keep making this comparison of like, you're taking what you know, making your best guess, and then they have to supplement or take away or all of that in the moment.
Yep. I like to say we make real-time's bed and they decide if they want to sleep in it. It's finding that balance, and we have very open communication between our groups. We're always talking, and that's the easiest way that we find that we can be successful is just making sure we're in constant contact, and they know it's always changing and we're not going to be right. Things are going to evolve, and a unit accidentally trips offline, or gas becomes super cheap and we find ways that we can sell into the market. There's so many factors that goes into it. It's just finding that balance and have a good team that works in cohesion, all going towards the mission. It makes everything successful.
It does kind of sound like an energy stock market. When you say buy and sell energy, do we make profit?
The word I like to use is margin. Every decision that we make goes to making member rates lower. When we make a sale, everything we do that we can lower the cost to serve load makes it easier for our members who are down the line, who are actually working in rural America and providing for us. We always have that mentality in the day ahead and real-time groups. How can we drive member rates? If I can make a margin which helps lower the overall rates for everyone, that's something that we're going to do on a daily basis.
I think it makes sense too, because weather and even sunlight is differing regionally, and you can be long or short on generation and how much energy you have. If you're having an excellent solar day and there's a bunch of clouds over in California, makes a ton of sense to take that extra solar, and maybe you've made more than you actually need for the system, and then selling that over to California. It's like, otherwise it's just going to waste, right?
That's the importance of the markets and why you need a marketing group. There's always going to be times when you have excess or when you're looking. And if you can communicate and work with people around the area or within the markets that we already operate in, that's how you can be successful and raise margin for everyone in the company and try to keep all rates low as possible and really just be reliable, responsible, and affordable.
You talked about having systems that help forecast. It sounds like there's a lot of different elements. You've got the market prices, you've got availability of our resources, you have weather and reliability. How does that all come together into a system that makes some sort of sense of it?
We use a software called WebSmartBid. Essentially, it's a gen planner software. So it takes all of your inputs. It takes your forecasts, what expected loads are going to be, what resources are available to be dispatched, and it plugs into a system and outputs a perfect solution. My team then takes that solution and looks at it and goes, can I beat that? Do I have excess? Can I go out and can I turn on a gas unit and buy natural gas and look at the market trends and sell that unit into the market and leave extra room for real time? Or vice versa, we're a little short. I need to go out and buy some energy. This software gives you a starting place, and then we use our market expertise amongst the group to then capitalize on the markets and figure out what really is the most economical way to maximize our fleet.
Off the top of your head, how many generation resources does Tri-State have to work with on our system?
I'm pretty sure we have just over 30 units that we're managing on a daily basis. Not all get dispatched. A lot of them, majority are renewable at this time. So those resources are take it. You don't have a choice. I'm not going to choose to shut off a wind resource or solar. You take your forecasts and those automatically get baked in. And then we use our dispatchable resources, so our coal and gas, and we figure out how those can help fill the position and where there would be gaps with our renewable forecasts.
That seems like a ton to me. How often are we buying versus just using what we already have?
That's the glory of the imbalance markets that we operate in. You go in and you say, here's my demand or load, here's our generation. The market then looks at it and says, Tri-State's playing ball. They have their generation, they have their load. Now the imbalance market's going to solve the least cost way to serve your demand. If we had cost, I'm making up a number here, of $20 per generation unit for the entire fleet. The market says, you have your generation, you have your load. There's a ton of wind on the system today. prices are actually coming in at $1. What we do is then our units dispatch at the bottom, and then you are buying back all these megawatts for $1 and making our cost to serve the members exponentially cheaper.
I might have this wrong, but are you also having to work with how much energy you can actually send down transmission lines? Because they're only rated for a certain voltage and a certain amount of power. So is that something you also have to factor in when you're figuring out, oh, I need wind and stuff from here, it needs to go over here, but we're maxed down on however much stuff can go on this line?
That's a huge aspect of our job, is managing transmission limitations and transmission outages. I'll take it back to what I was saying earlier, where we look at it as like a supply chain. We figure out point A, which is where the generation's coming from. Then we're looking at point B, and it's how do we get there? We have a million paths that can get you from point A to B, but this line's only good for 300 megawatts. This one's only good for 200 megawatts. You have to find out how can you really maximize that transmission system to serve your member load. We deal with it all the time. We see transmission outages are going to happen. There's extreme weather, maintenance needs to occur. When that happens, it can drastically change how you operate your units. Where you would be maximizing a unit in Wyoming, you no longer have the transmission to move it out. You might have to figure out, all right, I'm going to move these megawatts. Instead of going A to B, I'm going to go A to A.5 to A.5 to B. And just finding these extra legs and being very familiar with our system. Tri-State is very unique with the size of our system, and we have such a complex transmission system and generation fleet that there's a lot of ways to maximize it. And we work with Transmission Group every day to try to make sure that we can stay on top of that and maximize what we need to.
That's a ton of factors. We got weather. We have, I just want to call it transmission congestion, essentially, maintenance on certain things, and then just overall leveraging prices on the market. That is a ton of stuff to juggle with all the time.
And then throw in extreme weather, like you said, if it's impacting, maybe a transmission line is down, but also maybe it's really spiked the prices of energy on the market. And then we were talking about Winter Storm Uri and how you really see that volatility. How do we manage for those extremes?
It's all about calculated risk. No storm is ever the same. No heat wave is ever the same. Is it localized or is it in a broader region? When do I need to save the energy for ourselves and play it safe? If I'm seeing extreme market prices, can I take a little bit of a risk and not sell the farm, but sell a piece of it to try to get some margin out of it? Communication is the key. Everyone has specialties and knows how to move power about the system. Having a dedicated team that knows what they're doing, they work well with others. We work across departments in the organization. It really just helps you prepare for these situations. Make sure that when we do have extreme weather, we're talking to the natural gas fleet, making sure they're ready to go in an emergency, seeing how many days of water we have at the units, if we are going to potentially have to run fuel oil. We're lucky with our resource mix that we have a couple units that are dual fuel. So we have the Burlington units, which are completely fuel oil. We use those mainly for reserve purposes. Then we have our Lyman units and Knutson units and Pyramid units, which are all dual fuel and can run on either gas or fuel oil in a emergency situation.
That was a huge factor in Storm Uri, right? It was like, oh, natural gas prices skyrocketed. It's like, oh, wait, we have these fuel oil systems that we can burn kind of thing, right? At that point, was fuel oil cheaper than natural gas?
Yep. Fuel oil, that's why it's such an awesome thing to have in your back pocket. It is just like an ace up your sleeve. If gas hits anywhere in the $20 region or even in the upper teens, you're looking at a pretty close break even to fuel oil cost. If I can run fuel oil and not have to buy $20 gas, which can make our units $300, $400, that's something that we can do. It gives us flexibility. It makes our resource mix super diverse. It's definitely, when you have these extreme weather events, something that is awesome to have.
And in regards to reliability and staying on top of it, you guys also have dedicated staff that's working like 24/7, 365. You always have somebody monitoring and watching everything, right?
Yep, correct. My team is the day ahead group. We're the lucky ones. We get to work relatively normal hours. But we have the real-time team that is 24/7, 365 supporting, always there. The caveat to that is my team covers all natural gas for both real-time and day ahead. We have someone that's on call for gas to make sure that we can support the needs of real-time.
We have all these different sources of electricity, and you're balancing how they can all work at different times and balance each other out. I know Tri-State's adding batteries to our system. How will that affect the planning your team's doing and how we look at that?
Yeah, I believe batteries will be a huge asset in the future going forward. As the grid continues to evolve with more renewables, especially solar, every day you start to see what's called the bell curve, which is overnight, there's no sun. During the middle of the day, it's up and running and producing a ton of megawatts. And then right around the time everyone goes home from work and turns on their air conditioning and starts making dinner and watching TV, you see these vast drop-offs in power supply. And that's where batteries are really going to be able to come into play and kind of assist us in those situations, because we can plan to dispatch that right when solar comes off. We don't see these massive drop-offs in generation, and it helps avoid these price spikes when solar comes offline. It helps avoid real time from having to go out and buy super expensive power when I can just dispatch a battery and make that up. And then overnight or during the middle of the day, I can recharge that battery when prices are cheap and then dispatch it again following that to try to avoid and offset these huge bell curves that we see.
That's a really good point, though, because renewable energy, the cost effectiveness can be awesome, but it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. Awesome, sun shining during the middle of the day, but that's also when energy is the cheapest because you have the most resources available. So batteries really open up a window to where, okay, if there is excess generation, or like you were saying, save it for later when prices go up because you have less availability of stuff going on.
It makes it easy because before, every megawatt of power that is generated, it doesn't just dissipate. That's the hard thing about power, is it's not a physical commodity that you can touch. Before batteries, I can't generate it and store it. It just disperses to the system. Now, when it is super windy, I can charge up that battery and take advantage of the cheap prices and then dispatch it to help serve our member load over the high demand hours.
How much energy are batteries typically able to store, these large scale utility ones?
It depends on the physical battery, but most of them have a 4-hour dispatch window. We'll say 4 to 8 hours is probably pretty common. Not 100%, some last longer, and sometimes it's usually double the time to charge. It's like almost a 2-to-1 relationship to charge, like maybe 8 hours for a 4-hour dispatch. And that's not always the case. It just depends on the effectiveness and efficiency of the battery.
In your planning for when they come online, are you expecting to be using them every day, same day, or do you think you'll probably save it for later kind of thing?
A lot of batteries will come with some sort of, I guess the word would be like a dispatch limit. They'll give you a number of times you can dispatch in a certain period. So it's really going to be looking at it like, when are those times that we can use it? Some of them, you can dispatch them once a day and then they can recharge. And those are obviously awesome and more beneficial because if you need it, you can dispatch it. If not, you can hold on to it. Some of them have long-term, like you can only dispatch it once in however long of a period. It's just going to be finding that balance and figuring out when is the best time to use it.
So batteries are adding in a whole other element for your team to manage. Another big thing we know is coming is joining a regional transmission organization, or RTO. Can you give an overview of RTOs, which ones we have in the US, and a little bit of background on them?
There is 4 interconnects in North America. You have the Western Interconnect, then you have the Eastern Interconnect. Texas has their own power interconnect, and then there's one for Canada. Within that, the whole Western grid does not have an active RTO, and that's why it's such a growing period. There's a lot of options of what's going on. There's a push legislation-wise to be in an organized market by 2030. It's finding out what markets are going to be beneficial for you. We are working through where we're going to fit, and we're moving forward with the SPP RTO expansion or the RTO West. That's where we're joining. We're also going to be joining the CAISO EDAM in our southern position, most likely. Simultaneously, there's also the SPP Markets Plus, which is just the day ahead portion. In the East, they have, I'm not sure on the exact number, but there's a couple of RTOs that are already in place. SPP has its Eastern RTO footprint. There's the MISO, PJM. There's a couple in the East.
When we think about it like a map, you have this big gap where Tri-State is. That's going from Wyoming down through New Mexico, and that's currently not in an RTO, but about to be. And then right to the west, that whole chunk around California's the one RTO. Then you got Texas. They're doing their own thing, per usual. And right to the east of us, parallel, is SPP. It makes sense to join with an RTO that's physically near you. Then you have the rest of the Eastern RTOs that kind of take up the rest of the pockets over there. That's kind of what it looks like right now.
Yep, pretty much. And not everywhere in the US participates in RTOs.
Only the coolest companies.
Yeah, only the cool guys, you know? It's just such a growing and exciting time. And that's kind of what drew us to SPP. Our geographic location just makes sense. It already borders the SPP RTO. And so just on the other side of the interconnect is now where it's going to be coming together. And we'll be finding that cohesion between the whole SPP RTO rather than just East and West, eventually.
And thinking about that idea of how we work with our neighbors within the region, how does that change the way your team will look at things or how we'll work together with other utilities around us?
Being in constant communication with counterparties or other utilities is always beneficial. You get an idea and a feel for what are market prices doing. And there's always going to be a day when we're sitting great with our system and our neighbor is struggling, and vice versa will happen. Having that relationship and being able to rely on each other and know, hey, we're all in this together. We're all moving towards a reliable grid and making sure that we don't have rolling blackouts. We have a constant power supply to support the bulk electric system is super beneficial. And joining the RTO, instead of it being my utility and our neighbor's utility and their neighbor's utility, it looks at it as one governing body that's overseeing everything, and it treats everyone as a solid load. That way you don't see these excess spikes in generation and price swings. It makes it so everyone's on the same playing field and it's one demand and one set of generators versus my utility and your utility.
In an RTO, are you still maintaining autonomy and are you still able to be pretty flexible, or does some of that get pulled away as part of a larger group?
You still have to show that you are resource adequate. So you have to show you have the generation to meet your demand. Everyone has to follow that. RTO becomes the operator of the units and transmission. They are the ones that are dispatching, saying, offer your units into the market, and whatever status you offered, you can say this unit's not participating because it's in outage, or this unit's online, needs to run. It's just they're the ones that are now looking at all of the transmission and all of the rights that everyone has and figures out how can we most cost effectively serve everyone's demand in the area.
If the RTO is managing dispatch, it sounds like that changes your job a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely does. Where we sit now, we can say, I need to turn on this unit, need to run. What happens is when you're offering it in the market now takes over that. We still have to plan. We have to be super accurate with how we're offering and looking at the market. It's looking at trends and working with people and really looking at the numbers. Responsibilities are shifting from that area to being more of a different focus of analytics and markets and making sure that we're operating and serving our load.
Are you excited or are you terrified for that?
I am super excited. I think that's where we're going. In order to have a successful power grid, everyone needs to play along. We see it all the time now. It's not windy here, but it's windy in Wyoming, or it's windy through Nebraska. That entire part of the country is wind heavy. If I can't serve my demand now, I have to go out and buy, whereas the market is going to look at that situation and it will be able to get that gen from point A to B without me having to jump through a bunch of hoops to make sure I have the transmission. It's going to solve and give you the least cost solution for all of your generators.
I think that is the crux for getting renewables to be a larger part of the energy mix because they are intermittent. Before you're working with a pretty reliable, you can turn it on and off baseload natural gas and coal. But if you want more renewable penetration, because it is intermittent and weather dependent, unless you do have this big system that can work regionally within all these weather conditions and patterns and sunrise and sunsets, it's really hard to coordinate all that.
One of my biggest concerns is reliability going forward with the strong renewable presence. And that shows the importance of these organized markets that we're joining, because with those markets, it gives everyone access to generation wherever it may be, and it can help serve your demand.
Talking about geography too, it makes sense for us to keep adding renewables just because geographically we're in a really good spot for wind and we're in a really good spot for solar. If there weren't any there, it wouldn't make sense to build there, but I feel like monitoring the weather and patterns and being able to capture all that, we actually are able to take great advantage of natural resources specifically because of the column of the US that we're in.
Yeah, we're very lucky, as you said, with our location. Even though it's not in our title, we're one of the sunniest states in the US. So we get a lot of sunshine. We get a lot of wind. We have the plains. You get the wind that whips down off the mountains, which is very good for wind forecasts and for wind reliability. We have Wyoming. It's windy up there. You got the whole Eastern Plains. We are very lucky. And then we also have in the South, solar. We get New Mexico, and we can really take advantage and move all those megawatts to be reliable around the system. And we get to maintain our renewable outlook.
So where we've got this great north to south corridor, our market's opening us up more on that east to west sense of, okay, the sun's shining over here and it's not over here yet, and opening up that window of using renewables.
The DC tie is like our biggest limitation that we see a lot of, and it's because transmission goes to it, and then a lot of times it's one way or it's very congested. People own the rights that are going across. It makes access to energy that could be in the east or in the west hard to get. When we join these markets, it will make it easier to access and move energy, and it will help keep prices in the market cheap when it is a super renewable day and there's lots of solar and wind, because it will be easy to move all the way across the RTO.
What's worse, super hot day or super cold day?
From Tri-State's perspective, we are a summer peaking utility, and that's due mainly to our irrigation loads and everything like that. When it's really hot, we see higher demand, but when you get the really cold, you can get aspects of literally the gas pipelines freezing over or coal freezing in the coal trains that are moving, and there's nothing you can do on that aspect. It's kind of a pick your poison situation. I think I would rather operate on a hot day. If it's really cold, the cold has weird effects on power plants. Usually they can run a little bit better in the heat, but that's just me.
The more you know.
You're constantly solving puzzles. What do you most enjoy about your job and your role?
The most exciting aspect of this job is it's always changing. It's never the same. Every day is a different picture and a different problem that you have to solve. You get to work with some amazing people, and you get experience in both the gas and power world, which is an awesome thing because gas and power, they go hand in hand, but they operate completely different. For example, the gas day goes from 8 a.m. to 8 a.m., where the power day goes from midnight to midnight. You have to find how things work together and how you can plan around. And it's just exciting. Everyone's dedicated, and we have a great team that supports our mission, and it makes coming to work fun.
Awesome.
Do you want to speak a little bit about the gas portion of your job?
Tri-State, we don't serve any residential gas. All of our gas needs go directly to supporting our natural gas power plants. When we're running and dispatching our fleet and figuring out what units we have to do, my team is looking at the predicted runs for the units, and then we're buying our gas based on those needs and managing our imbalances, making sure there's no operational flow orders or anything, which essentially say, hey, you can't burn this much gas, or we need you to burn more gas. Balancing that. We do that from a day ahead perspective. We take the plan, we buy our gas based on what we expect to dispatch, and then when it comes in real time, we have to look and see how are the markets dispatching? Are they dispatching the units up? Do I need to buy more gas? Can I reduce some of the nominations that I have based on what I bought on projections? It's balancing that hourly and daily to make sure that we are maximizing our position.
With all the changes and innovations in your line of work, what market trends or changes are you watching the closest right now?
We are looking a lot into the rapid change in renewables because everyone is adding more and more renewables. We're also tracking who is going where in the West because all of these new markets are emerging. It's trying to figure out who's going to be participating in the RTO, who is joining Markets Plus, who is joining CAISO EDAM, and figuring out how is that going to fit into our position. Then one final thing I would say is data center growth. That's a huge aspect that we're looking into. There's definitely benefits, but figuring out how can we supply these massive data centers while keeping our reserve margins and everything that we need to intact and still serving and trying to lower our rates at the same time.
Do you have a comparison for the scale of energy consumption that a data center needs?
It can be huge. Tri-State's peak demand is around 3,000 megawatts, anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 megawatts in an hour. Some of these data centers are 1,000 megawatts an hour. That would be a third of our entire demand in an hour. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
And that's but a lot of them are still anywhere from 50 to a couple hundred megawatts an hour that you would have to account for and adjust for. It's a huge thing that you have to take into consideration. Where am I going to be able to get those megawatts to serve that? And figure out, do I have the transmission to be able to serve that? There's so many aspects. There's a lot of regulation and everything going into it and making sure that it would be a viable option. But some of them can be very drastic and huge changes to your load.
To go back to the buffet and serving somebody else's plate, that would be like, is there even enough food at the buffet, or is there a plate big enough to hold all this? Can we get it where it needs to go?
I know that's a concern for a lot of people around the industry is, can we actually support this? The idea of building a data center and promoting growth is awesome. It's important and it will help guide our future. Do you want to build a data center at a certain location? Is there even transmission capability to interconnect there? What are other resources that can serve that in the area? There's so many aspects that go into it. And that's why I'm glad there's other teams outside of mine that are looking into the future and figuring out forecast-wise, what resources can we take on and how can we be successful?
Yeah, huge collaborative effort and really makes it seem more important to get into an RTO so you can manage huge loads coming on like that too.
And the key factor there is just making sure you have enough generation to be able to serve these things. That's how the RTO will function, is if you bring what you have to the plate, then the market will actually be able to work for you. And it avoids you from leaning on the market and saying, I can't serve my demand, because ultimately the market is designed so that if everyone's playing along, we can all get along together.
Also interested, in addition to trends, are there any new technologies coming on board that you're excited for too?
I am super excited from the software standpoint. We're working with software to help maximize our market position, like a one-stop shop to make sure that we're operating the system, able to bid into the market and have just a whole software suite that helps support us. From a unit standpoint, I'm super excited for our batteries and potential new gas plants coming online. Those are the things that we're really going to need in the future. When the wind's not blowing, we have to be able to make up for that somewhere.
Just out here wheeling and dealing with Tim Cusick.